Okay, well, it's 32 minutes past now, so I think we'll get underway. So thank you for joining today's webinar. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into charting in Life QI. So I've got a slide up on the screen at the moment with a rough agenda of all the items that we're going to cover in today's webinar. We've got 45 minutes. It might not be quite 45 minutes in total, but it kind of depends how many questions we have, and we will have plenty of time for questions as we go through the process. So if you do have any questions as we go through this, then please use the Q&A feature. So feel free to ask any questions you have in there, and if you can do it through there rather than the chat, that just helps us to sort of keep those a bit more organized. If there's anything else you want to share through the chat, that's fine. Feel free to use that as well. I'm joined today by my colleague Erica. So Erica will be on hand to answer some of those questions and point you in the right direction with any links and articles that might be useful. And as we cover different topics through here, she'll post some of that information so that you can access that through those channels. We'll also be sharing the video following the webinar. So if there are things you want to look back on and rewatch, then you can absolutely do that. You'll get a follow-up with an email with the link to the webinar. Okay, so in terms of what we're going to have a look at today, so we're going to have a look through the different chart types that are available in Life QI for you to use and how to choose which ones to use. We're going to go through the process of actually creating a measure and a chart within Life QI. So we'll do that. So we'll look at how you add your data and how you edit data as you go through the process of recording that measure. Then some of the things you'll need to do as you're using the charts, like working through different phases of your data collection. So have a look at that and how you recalculate things like your center line. We'll talk through that process as well. Look at adding annotations, linking plan, do, study, act cycles into your charts, and also how to use the tools in Life QI to evaluate your data using special cause variation. And finally, take a look at exporting data if you want to get images or data sets out of Life QI to use those elsewhere as well. So that's roughly what we'll talk through. We'll stop sort of halfway through and gather any questions that might have come up, and we'll have time at the end as well for those too. Okay, so let's start talking about the different chart types and what's available. So I'm going to start off on this page on our blog. This is a really useful page about statistical process control. It talks all about the process of SPC, also the difference between run charts and control charts, where obviously the run chart is sort of the most basic of type of chart that you might like to use, quite simple. But obviously, if you are interested in different control charts and how they might be useful and the more advanced statistical analysis you can get from those, then come and have a look at some of these articles. It's going to be really, really handy for you. There's an article that we'll come back to in a minute about picking the right SPC chart and how to go about that process. That I'll come back and have a look at. But just before we do that, just wanted to show you the range of charts that are available in Life QI for you to use. So we've obviously got the run chart. That's the default in the system. You might like to use run charts. You might be happy with that. If you do want to use other types of some SPC charts, then these are the different options that you've got. You can come in here and click on these and read about all of those in a bit more detail if you wish. So we'll have a look in the system in a minute, but just before we do that, I wanted to show you a couple of these articles. So the first one is this one around the basic anatomy of a control chart. So I think it's a really useful place if you're starting off with control charts, just to understand what all the different things on the chart mean, basically. So different phases that you go through in your measurement, You can see these annotated on here, and you can see these described in the text here. Talking about control limits, so what they are and what they mean, how they're calculated, and also the special cause variation and the different varieties of that we see within the chart. So we'll talk about some of these terms today as we go through the process. So if you do want to come back and refer to an article such as this, it'd be a really useful port of call for you. Okay, so wanted to talk a little bit about how to choose the right SPC chart. And we will have a look at this in the system in a minute, and there's some guidance within there. But this article is a really good starting point. Particularly worth pointing out, it's really useful flow diagram, which is looking at how to decide what type of chart you want to use. So it's posing a number of different questions. So starting up here with the type of data you're collecting. So are you measuring continuous data, something like height or length or weight or something, or is it discrete data, which, yeah, it's obviously whole numbers essentially. So deciding what types of data you're going to use, that's going to influence what type of chart you're going to use. If you are going down the continuous route, think about, are you measuring things from multiple groups like different hospitals, or is it a single population that you're looking at? And that's going to help you decide what type of chart you want to use. So basically at the end of this process, you should end up with the correct type of SPC chart for your data. And as you go through the other side, you can see it's posing a number of questions here as well, which ultimately hopefully ends up with the appropriate SPC chart for your data set. So some of the terms in here, if you're not familiar, or sort of if they need a bit more explanation, those are laid out down here towards the bottom of the article, so you can understand those in a little bit more detail. So that's really useful. We also have an SPC cheat sheet, which you can download. And that includes this diagram and a bunch of information around the different charts. So yeah, really useful, just one handy document that you can have, that if you are thinking about what charts to use, you can go and refer to that and identify the correct chart for your needs and for your data. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about how to do this in Life QI itself. Sorry, I've just lost part of my screen. Not sure what's going on there. Okay, so yeah, we're logged in now to Life QI, and we're going to talk through the process of choosing a chart, setting up, choosing a measure, setting up a chart within the system. So we're going to be doing this in a project. If you haven't got a project set up yet, you will need to set up a project before you can use the charting functionality. So you can come in here and start a new project and set that up using the project wizard that will guide you through that. I'm going to go into a project that we've already got in the system and just open that one up. And we're going to look at the measures and charts area. So this is where you're going to find all of the functionality that we're looking at today. And this is where you can come in and start creating your new measure using the grey button here. You can see listed in this project, it's already an established project. We've got a number of different measures that already exist, and those are split into different types of measure. So we have called outcome measures, our process measures, and our balance measures. And you can see the different measures here and some basic information around them. So we've got the title of each measure, the data collection frequency, if there's one defined. So you see this is data that's collected on a monthly basis, this top one. And the data are obviously overdue, that's what it's telling me here. If you don't have a data collection frequency, then you'll see that as a undefined one. We've also got a representation of the data over here on the right-hand side that you can see in the spark line. Okay, so setting up a measure within the system. So we do that clicking on this button here. initiate a new measure. And you can see it's opened up a 3-step wizard to set up this measure. It's asking for some basic information about the measure. The red fields are mandatory, so you do have to populate these fields as you go through this process. So we're going to give our measure a title. So just make that a bit more specific. So we're going to give our measure a title. We're also going to choose a type of measure. So I mentioned these earlier. We've got outcome, process, and balance measures. If you're not sure what type of measure you've got, you can click on the tooltips here, and it describes what your outcome measures are, what your process measures are, what your balance measures are. Any field that we go through in the system has these tooltips, so it's really useful if you're looking for a bit of assistance. You can get that through those. Just get these sort of quick little hints and tips that you can use. So here we're going to mark this up as an outcome measure. It's one of the primary measures of the project, so go and click on that. You can also populate here your operational definition, so how you define this measure. You don't have to do this now. You can come and do this later. But yeah, it gives you the option to do it as you set this up. Also here is a field to document your data collection plan. So this is really useful, particularly if you're working in a team and there's maybe different people who are going to be collecting data or involved in that process. And this is really the chance to communicate with everyone how it's going to be done, the standards you're going to use, like where you're going to get the data from, how frequently, that type of stuff. So go ahead and use that, make sure that's clear for everyone involved. Okay, then the next couple of fields are really important. And these are particularly important because once you set these for your measure, they can't be changed. You would have to create a new measure to change them. So definitely worth putting a bit of thought into these. The first one is around chart type. So I mentioned that the run chart is the default, and we've got all these different other types of control chart that you can use. So you can either come and select your chart here, or if you're like me and you want a bit of help with that, then you can come and click on this help article here. This is going to guide you through the different types of chart that are available. So it's a little bit like the flow diagram that we looked at. And by all means, you can use that as well. But this one just gives a brief run through of each of the different charts, some typical examples of what you would use them for. And also what I find really helpful is what data you would need to capture to be able to use this type of chart. So you can see, if you look at a few different examples, like here with a run chart, we just got 2 fields of data, which is basically a label for each data point on the x-axis, and then your value, which would be your y-axis. If you're looking at something like a P chart, which measures percentages, you see typical examples here where everything's in percentages. The data to capture there is a time, so whether that's a day or a month or something, the count and the total, so that's like your numerator denominator of your percentage. So yeah, that's really useful just to understand that. And you see some of them have more, they have like 4 different fields, so that's going to be reflected in your data table when you do set up that measure. So when you find the one that sort of fits what you need, then you can select that here, or you can select it from the list over here, and that sets that up. And then you can also really important is to define your data collection frequency. So if this is something that's being collected on a regular basis, you can see the options for that here: daily, monthly, quarterly, weekly, yearly. Select whatever those are. If you have something that's like a rare event or something with an unknown frequency, then you can use the custom unknown. So you can just put the dates in when you have occurrences. If you have something that isn't necessarily date related and you want some other factor sort of on the x-axis, you can use the custom no date, and that'll basically let you put anything on the x-axis. So I'm going to choose a monthly measure for mine. going to collect this on a monthly basis. I'm going to use a C chart. And then this is the chance here on the next page of the wizard is to link to any drivers. So if you do have a driver diagram set up in your project, we're not really talking about driver diagrams today, but if you've gone through that process, you can come and link up your drivers to your measures here. So I could choose, I want it linked to a secondary driver. I want it linked to this secondary driver, and you come and add that in here. You can do that with multiple drivers, or to your aim, or whatever it is that you need to link it to there. Okay, so I've just clicked create. So that's made our measure. You see it's taken me to a kind of blank looking page at the moment, but we'll get to that in a minute as we put some data in. All the information we've put in is now in the plan tab. So you can see that here, all that information that we discussed here, things like the operational definition, data collection plan. I haven't populated those. If I wanted to come back and do that, come and click edit over here. I come and add this information later on. So yeah, just go ahead and do that. Make sure you save afterwards, obviously, and commit that to the system. Okay, so just before I go and sort of create a chart and add some data to that, I just wanted to pause for a moment and ask Erica if there's any questions.
All good at our end. Thank you, Andrew. There was one question that came in that when you were working through the flow diagram was just checking if the types of chart that you were talking through, whether they're available in the system depending on the contract. So I've said yes, they are a standard tool set within the projects at the moment. Thank you. But no, apart from that, all fine. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so let's go on to actually building a chart. So this part of the process, so if we set up a measure, and then basically within a measure, you can set up your chart. So the reason it's established like that is you may have a measure that you want multiple charts for. So if you're measuring the same thing in a few different places, you could have one measure and then multiple charts for that measure. So that's the reason for that structure. So I now need to add a chart to my measure and give that chart a name. I'm just going to call this hospital 1. You can use any naming convention you like, as long as it makes sense. You can then add rows of data to this, so you can come and manually add data, or if you have some data already prepared, like I do, then you could, if you've got data that you've already collated, and here we've got a spreadsheet with some data in it, I'm going to come and copy this out of the spreadsheet and pop that into that cell, and that's just copied all of that data into the system. And you can see that listed here. So we've got our months and the values, and then I'm going to create the chart, and that's then added my data. So that's my measure in hospital 1 is that spark line, and click on that and go and see the chart itself. So just to talk you through the chart page here, so we've got the type of chart, the measure, we've got the plot here, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Below that, we've got the data table. So you can see all the data that we've just put in sort of listed here. If you want to edit this table or add more data, which you probably will do through the course of your measurement, then come up here and click the edit button. You can then go ahead and add rows of data. It will automatically add, in this case, the next month of this data set because it's defined on a monthly frequency. If I were to add a data point here, it's going to ask me to redraw the chart, and then it plots that data on the chart for us. If you did want to do another bulk import of data, you can do that as well, just using the copy paste methodology that I showed earlier. So you can add your data, make sure you save, and that basically populates that within that space. We'll come back and have a look at the chart in a bit more detail in a minute. What I wanted to do first was show you how you can use the measure to aggregate data from different locations. So I'm going to go and add another data source, so another chart, and this is going to be hospital type, hospital 2. I'm going to add some data to this one. Cheekily use the same data just because I have it to hand. Create that chart. See, that's now added a second chart to the measure. So you can see the two charts listed here, which you can go into the details of if you like. And it's also showing us now an aggregate chart below that. So this is pulling information, this is pulling data from the two different data sets and pooling them into an aggregate chart. So if you are looking across multiple data sets, you can see that high level view of your data in this chart here, and that's automatically created for you. You don't need to do anything to do that. The only thing you do need to do is have some sort of regular data collection frequency, like weekly, monthly, quarterly, rather than if you don't have a defined frequency, it won't be able to match up, obviously, those different data points from across the data sets. So that's really useful. But let's go in and have a look at, in a bit more detail, at the chart itself. So what can we see on the screen here? Well, we've got our data that's being plotted from the data table. You can see that here. You can then see it's plotting our mean, which is the line through the center line. So for a SPC chart, always for a control chart, always plots the mean. Run chart would be the median. So we've got the mean, and then the lines either side of that, our control limits. So we've got first, second, and third. So you don't really need to know anything about these. You can refer back to the anatomy of a control chart article if you're interested in that. But basically, don't really need to know too much about this. Just be aware that that's what they are. And then as you go through this process, there's a few things that you'll need to do. So as you go through your improvement project, you're going to have some baseline data probably, and then you're going to move into a phase of testing where you're going to run some PDSAs, test some changes. So as you do that, you need to decide or know when you're doing that. So here, if we moved, let's say, from the baseline phase into a test phase at this point, I could come into edit mode and click on that point. And then you can see, as I've done that, it's given me some basic information about the data point. So this is about this data point. It's given me information about the center line, the upper control limit, and the lower control limit for this data point. So those are calculated. And then it's also given me a few options. So one of those is to create a note or an annotation. Add one of those. You can link a PDSA if it's a change you're testing. We'll come back and do that in a minute for a different measure, different data point, sorry. But then also what's really important here is your phase. So you always start off in a baseline phase. If I want to move now into the test phase, which will be the next phase, you can click on that, and you can see that what it's done at the top here is it's now highlighting that I've got baseline phase up to this point, and then I've moved into a test phase from there. So what I'm going to do is save that. I'm just going to refresh the chart by reopening it. And the reason for doing that is you can now see, now it's refreshed, that you have this hard line for the center line through the baseline phase, and then it's fixing that center line basically and continuing that as a dashed line as we go through into the test phase here. So that's really important. Obviously, if you're testing changes, you want to be testing them against your baseline. You don't want that, your center line from the baseline measurement phase. You don't want that to be recalculating continuously. So that's now set. You can see the the note point that we added. So that's here appearing in orange. Any annotations will appear along this line here. And then you can also see highlighted at the top here in pink, this is highlighting any special cause variation. So this is just analyzing the data set, and it's looking at any variation that's sort of statistically significant, basically. And there's a few different types. There's 5 different types that we're looking for, that the system will be looking for, and you can see the details of those in this article, I think. Yeah, so special cause variation. This is the anatomy of a control chart article, so it talks through the different types of special cause that the system will be looking for. You can also see in the system itself, if you have a data point and you click on, it's highlighting a special cause, you can click on that and go and see what that special cause is, and if it's something across multiple data points, like this example of a shift, you can hover over it and see the data points that it includes as well. So you don't need to know the ins and outs of different types of special causes, but just know that if you're getting these pink things, then there's something that is statistically unusual and probably warrants a bit of thought or a bit of investigation. Okay, so yeah, those will be automatically highlighted for you. If you do identify some special causes, and that might be because you shifted your new normal, basically, so your centerline may have shifted. If you want to reflect that in your chart, then you might need to end your recalculation, which you could do at any point. So this is, let's say we want to do that here. Yeah, so let's say we want to recalculate control limits at this point. Again, save it, open that one back up again. You can then see what we've done in the chart here is we've had the period of baseline measurement, plotting the center line for that. We then had that continuation of the center line as we tested changes. And then we've got here recalculation that I've just made, and then it's shifted the center line, and now it's drawing a new center line based on our new normal, which again you could go and test and hopefully shift that again and show you those gradual improvements as you go through the process. Okay, something I've realized I haven't mentioned yet is PDSAs, so how to annotate those on or indicate those on the chart. So when you are running a test of change, again in edit mode, find the time that you implement that change, and then you can come and select it from your PDSA list. So the PDSAs area within your project is where you would set these up, and then you just come and select those and add those to your chart. So I've just done that, and then you can see that PDSA appearing here on the chart. So obviously really useful to see, once you implement a change, what's the effect on the data set. Hopefully you get some special causes arriving as you start to show improvement from those changes as well. Okay, Erica, just going to pause again, see if you've got any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. We had one come through, sorry, 2. One was about can you add retrospective data to the chart? So I said, yes, absolutely, you can do that. And the second one was a good question, but in terms of exporting the chart, currently when you export the chart from Life QI, the details of the note that you've annotated do not export currently. So you will just see that there is a note attached to that specific data point, but the actual details will not be pulled off at the moment. So yeah, if you've got anything to add to those, Andrew, but those are the 2 main points that came in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I guess that leads on nicely to exporting data. So if you do want to export any of your charts or your data, so if you wanted the chart as an image, you come up to actions, you can export an image of this. If you want to extract that, use that in a presentation or something, you can do that right here. If you want to export the actual data, you can export that into a data sheet here as well. So really simple to do that. This means you can pull down all the information that you need. It will just give you a download, and it will download that to a CSV file for you. So I'll just show you what that looks like quickly. sorry, it seems to have disappeared somewhere. There we go. Yeah, so that's what that looks like. So you can see the data that's coming down. You see the link PDSAs, you can see the notes within here. So yeah, Erica mentioned that you can't see the details of the notes. That's in the graphic export. If you're using a CSV, then you do get the information about the notes as well, which is really useful.
Just while you're on that exports, we've had a question come through from Joseph, are you expecting to be able to export everything, including notes, in the next 6 months? I don't know if I want to answer that now.
There are some different options for exports and downloads that are being worked on. So yeah, look out for those. Don't have exact timeframes for those. But yeah, like I just showed, if you do want all the details and you want to do that in a CSV file, then that's fine. If you want it on the chart, those are updates that are being worked on, but we don't have an exact timescale for that at the moment.
Thank you, Andrew. And then just on that as well, which ties into it quite nicely, is a question from Jill. Is there any way of making the mean line and the control limits any clearer to colour them for any easy visual?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the moment, all of the elements we see on here are all standard. Everything's displayed the same. So you will always have your data points as black circles. You will always have your mean as a dark line, and your control limits will always be displayed in the sort of lighter grey colour. Again, that is something that is soon to change, is going to change, and that will give you more flexibility on how you display those, give you options on colours, but also on symbols that you might like to use. So that flexibility is coming. It's not available yet, but that will be coming to a future update. Okay.
Thank you. That's everything.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to go and close this one now and just come back briefly to our measures page. So we've now gone ahead and added a bit more information to Hostel 1 data set. So we added our PDSAs and our notes and things. We haven't done the same for Hostel 2 yet, but you can see if we come down to the aggregate chart, that information is now being fed into this chart, and you can see our PDSA from Hostel 1 run at this time. You can see the note point that was left by that team as well within here. We don't see the changes in the center line and control limits and all those recalculations within here because this is essentially a new data set. So if you do want to do that, you come and edit it for the complete data set and sort of run those again, essentially, because you're probably going to want to do those at different times to the local level. Just worth mentioning as well, if any of you are involved in programs of work, which I'm sure some of you are, these are bigger pieces of work, working with multiple projects on larger initiatives. Within here, you'll see can accumulate quite large amounts of data. If you do need to, I'm sorry, just coming through to the measures area. So you might have different measures, but each of these measures, you might have many different teams who are contributing data to this. So you do end up with a fair bit of information, data. If you want to come and download that in bulk, then you can do that here. So you can come and export your project measure data, and that will pull down all the data from all the projects that are being run as part of your program and compile those into a CSV file so that you can access those all in one space and extract those elsewhere. So that's always worth knowing about if you are using the programs feature within Life QI. Okay, so I think that's almost everything that I wanted to go through. So Erica, are there any final questions?
Just one question that's just come through in terms of if you want to see the disaggregated data, so for example, your hospital one chart that you showed, do you click on the relevant sparkline? So I said yes, if you want to kind of highlight or focus in on that particular chart and the data that's feeding that chart, you open up that sparkline and it will pull through the specific data for that area.
Yeah,
no, that's
exactly. Yeah, okay. I'll just show you that briefly. Oops, just get that one. Yes, this was the measure we had. So the measures page, you've got the two sparklines here. So you just click on whatever data set you're interested in and come in and view that or add data to that within this space. And you can do that as well for the other one down here, which we haven't added any detail to yet. Okay, excellent. So yes, if you need access, if you would like access to any of this information, you can see the links that Erica's shared already to access some of that. We will follow up with the recording for this session and send that on in an email later. And please do come in and have a go with the charting, try out different types of charts. If you do need any help as you go through that process, you can always use the tooltips and you can also use our help center. You can see on whatever page you're on in the system, you always have this blue link at the top. So here on the measures page, click on here and go and see loads of information about measures. There's articles, videos, step-by-step instructions. So plenty of help available there. You can also use our live chat to, the chat feature to both search that, but also talk to one of our support team if you're really struggling with how to do something in the system and get the help you need there. So thank you for listening, and yeah, please go and have a go with your charting in Life QI.
Thank you, everyone.